Welcome in. We are live for the last time in the 2023 NFL season here on January 8th, 2024. Yeah. How'd that go for you?
Terrible.
Yeah.
Terrible game. We were talking about it on the before we get live, and just what a terrible way to end the season, Just terrible.
I got some stuff. I don't have a lot. I feel like this show might be super fast. Like,
Yeah.
it's just one of those things. It's like, I don't know. How many Fast and Furious movies are there? And like,
10 or 11.
like double digits,
Yeah.
And like it's kind of like, yeah, it feels like I've seen this before. It's just a little different. Actors are a little different now, but it's kind of like this serial show that we just keep watching, and the ending is always the same.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's like the Bears, the Washington Generals going up against the
Oh, jeez.
Globetrotters. What is it?
That's nice to say. That makes sense. I mean, this is the Packers' second 10-game winning streak in the last 30 some odd years. During the Favre Rodgers. I saw a stat. I don't know if it's true or not. It was in a meme on Facebook. Of course, who knows? Something like the Packers are like 50-15 against the Bears the last however many 65 games. It's like,
I mean, I believe any number at this point, and I know I've done the numbers. That's the thing is, I'm trying to think in my head. I'm like, is that right? Yeah, it's possible.
Right.
70, 35 years, 15 plus 1. Yeah, I mean, maybe not 35 years, but like I think they'd start it early and far.
Oh, yeah. I'm thinking 15, 16 would be 2 a year. But still, come on. It's
a lot.
Horrible. Oh, my God. We should probably get this thing started because we're getting really depressed. In the
I was just gonna say it's like you talk to a Bears fan long enough, and they'll be like, "Oh yeah, well I remember this game where the Bears beat." And it's like you shouldn't be able to pick them out like that. Like that's like you should be like, "Oh yeah, I don't know, it was one of those." And it was the 2 years that we swept them. It was one of those games. Like no, it's like. Oh no! It was Thanksgiving. They were retiring Brett Favre's jersey, and that was the best game. And it's like, yeah, they didn't win another one like within 6 on either side. Yeah, I get it. It was great. I liked it too, but it's so frustrating. Okay, yeah, you're right. We should probably just go.
Yeah,
we should probably just go, and then maybe we'll spend more time with the YouTube, and we'll just complain for a while before we sign off for the year.
I like it.
Okay. Welcome to Bear and Balance. I'm Jeff Berckes, a writer for Windy City Gridiron, and I'm joined by the editor of that fine website, Lester A. Wiltfong Jr. Lester, did we see the last game of Justin Fields in a Chicago Bears uniform?
You're just starting right off the top here. Yeah, I mean,
trying to give you something. I'm trying to last show, trying something a little different, trying to throw one at you.
It really feels that way, and we've talked about it a lot. It's gonna suck because we're fans, and that's what we are first and foremost. We're fans of the Bears. We're fans of Justin Fields, and it just seems like the writing's on the wall. And if Flu stays, which it really looks like they're leaning that way, I'd rather them just run it back because I don't want to give a new rookie quarterback to him and any regime he brings in here because we've seen this story before.
We've seen the movie before.
We've seen it before. This is just a sequel with different characters. It's just like it's not going to work out. But this is what it looks like they're going to do. I'm guessing Getsy will be gone at some point. We should hear those news, breaking news at some point. It's got to happen. They can't bring Getsy back. If they bring Getsy back and they let Fields go, they're basically saying it was all Fields' fault. That would really, I mean, we'll get over it. Fans will get over it. The players will get over it. But oh my God, that's the worst case scenario of this whole thing.
It would be a tone deaf organization for sure, if nothing else. So, all right. Well, we'll get into that more either tonight in the off season. I mean, I'm sure Bears fans will come to a consensus on what the right decision is. And there will be no arguments that everybody will hold hands and sing Kumbaya. But we start this show off in the trenches, Trench Tribute, final one of the year. And honestly
Yeah.
a tough one, Lester, because not a lot of highlights for the trenches. Bears basically got dominated in this game.
Yeah, it was. It was a dominating performance. They only lost by a score, technically, but a dominating win by the Packers. Brutal. Trench tribute. I'm going rookie Darnell Wright. Of all the offensive linemen, he seemed to have the best, most consistent game. Again, no one was very good on either side of the trenches. But if we're gonna go anyone, it's kind of maybe it's a season long thing, kind of like hell of a job Darnell Wright as a rookie right tackle to come in and just do it. And he is one of the few bright spots this season for the Bears. So I got to go the rookie.
Yeah, I like that, particularly as a season award, right?
Yeah,
Like, no one on that offensive line necessarily deserves a lot of flowers on this one, but as a season award, we've talked about Darnell Wright a lot. I think he's been highlighted in this space. I don't know, maybe 50% of the shows.
yeah,
That's how much we like him. Um, he's been consistent. He's been steady. He's improved I said he's consistent and he's improved, but like he's been there and he's improved over the year.
yeah.
And you see the premium traits. You see why he was picked up so high, and why Ryan Poles felt so good about pulling the trigger to bring him in with a top draft pick. Absolutely love that. Again, I didn't. There's not a lot to love about that particular game from anybody
Tough.
on the offensive
Yeah.
line. Defensive line, not much better. I thought they got dominated too. I was just gonna give a little love to DeMarcus Walker for getting a sack. It was really one of the only bright spots from that defensive line. And weren't even a lot of pressures. And
Nope.
so it was really hard to choose from there, but he got home. And I think that once that position opened back up for him to get more reps on the field after Anick Ngakoue got hurt, he seemed to play a little better than he had before that injury. And so I'm gonna give a little love to DeMarcus Walker here at the last week of the year.
He's a good football player. I mean, he's a nice rotational piece. He's not a guy you're expecting to count on and come in and dominate it all. Montez Sweat is that guy. The Bears are going to look for a dude in the offseason. Somehow, some way, they got to get someone opposite him. Walker, though, he'll be in the mix. He can play the interior for you a little bit as well. So, good football player. That's a good pick there for the final trench tribute there.
Well, let's just rolling
Right?
right into Twitter. Not wasting any time. So let's start with your tweet of the week. What did you have?
So Sam Monsoon, who is Pro Football Focus, he is at PFF_Sam. He tweeted out something about Jaylen Johnson. He said the passer rating when targeting Bears corner Jaylen Johnson is 33.3 for the whole season. Pretty damn good. The passer rating when you're just throwing the ball in the dirt 50 times in a row would be 39.6. Jaylen Johnson had a fantastic season for the Chicago Bears. He actually just mentioned it about an hour or so ago on a 6-7 score. Seems like a deal's going to get done. He's pretty confident something's going to happen here. The Bears can't let this guy go. I know there was a lot of talk up and down about, they've got a couple young guys they can just slot in that place and then fill him in and not spend the money on Jaylen Johnson. No, pay Jaylen Johnson, bring him back. Terrell Smith is fine. We kind of saw him get abused against the Packers. Tyree Stevenson is the of the two. He's the other guy. You got three pretty good guys, one all pro level guy, and a couple other guys there. That's a good start for your secondary.
Yeah, just to break that thing down a little bit, the idea of dirting the ball 50 times and having a higher passer rating, you might be like, "What are you? How is that even possible?" Yeah. Well, one of the components of quarterback rating is interception percentage. So that's where all of those points are for dirting the ball 50 times. Now, I could probably dirt the ball 50 times in a row if an NFL team was willing to let me do it. I wouldn't trust myself throwing it down the field. I would get picked off and I would lose those points. So I think that's where the points are, is the interception. You would have a 0 interception percentage, but that's the point is when teams have thrown and targeted at Jaylen Johnson, he has picked the ball off enough to where that part of the quarterback rating against him is very low. They're not getting a lot of points for that. They're not putting up touchdowns on him. They're not putting up a high completion percentage. They're not getting a lot of yards on him. And so that number is incredible. And one of the other maybe it was Benjamin Solak had his All-Pro vote, which he doesn't have one, but he's just saying, here's my All-Pro team. And he had Jaylen as his first team All-Pro corner. And I would imagine that there's probably going to be quite a few writers that are going to see statistics like this, and they're going to say, oh, well, yeah, this guy should, I probably should vote for this guy, right? It's very difficult to watch all 32 teams and to know all of the players and to be able to really do this. So I do think that voters on those kinds of things do pick up on stats like this to help them fill out their ballot. And so it would not surprise me if Jaylen does come out of this year as a first team or minimum second team All-Pro corner, which is only going to help him at the negotiation table.
Oh yeah. I mean, he was the stingiest corner to throw against. I mean, he had an outstanding year. You know, the one knocking him, of course, was turnovers. He got some turnovers this year. They got to pay this dude. I mean, they got to bring him back. You know, I don't care who the head coach is, who the DC is. Jaylen Johnson's got to be one of your building blocks.
Yeah, you can always use a good corner. I mean, it's not like a coach is going to come in here and be like, I don't like this guy.
Yeah.
Oh, this guy that's shutting down opposing wide receivers doesn't fit my scheme, right?
Yeah.
Like, no. This is the dude. You got to lock him up. I'm right. All right, let's move on. And I think it's Sam Monson, not Monsoon, but I think you should pitch that as like his
Monsoon,
like alter ego. You know, that'd be cool. Like Sam the Monsoon. I love it. All right, Jack Silverstein, who's our guy at Reed Jack. He's been kind of on this a little bit on the Twitter machine on the head coaching thing. He's not very happy with Coach Eberflus, and you know, anytime that Jack agrees with me, you know, I gotta love it a little bit. Yeah. So he says 2 years, 10-24 record. He says 3 divisional wins, but it's only 2, right? 2 divisional wins, 0-4 against the Packers. Didn't develop a unique quarterback. Two top assistants resigned or left. He has the nerve to talk about foundation. So this was quoting the last presser from Matt Eberflus, where he was talking about, you know, hey, we think the foundation is set. We think everything looks good. And, you know, it's just take a step back and, you know, what are you talking about here? So I did wanted to pitch this to you. What about what Matt Eberflus said is correct? And what about what Matt Eberflus said is just like bonkers and there's no way that he should go there?
A lot of coach speak from him in his postseason presser, and it was, I mean, look, the culture's fine, but we're talking about professional athletes. Okay. I would be more surprised if there wasn't a good locker room. I mean, that's what you're trying to. You're trying to bring in good guys. I mean, that's who he's drafted in 2 years. They put a premium on character, you know, so they're drafting guys they feel are high character. His free agent pickups are high character. The guys he retained from the Ryan Pace era, good character. So yeah, there's a nice foundation here, you know, but that's Ryan Poles. That's kudos to Ryan Poles, the GM. I think anyone they bring in is going to have a pretty good locker room, because that's the guys that Poles is looking for. That's who he wants. He has a premium on that. He understands that. He values that. So I'm with you, man. Flus has got to go. It's come on, man. Like, what are the Bears doing here? I just don't understand.
Well, you know, I think about this metaphor, analogy, whatever, and you know, what's the first thing you do, particularly if you're building in the Midwest and building a house in the Midwest? You dig a hole, right? And that was last year. You dig a hole and then you pour a foundation. Now, the people that dig the hole and pour the foundation aren't always the people that frame the house and throw the roof on it and furnish it and, you know, make it livable space, right? And so just establish that for a second, that maybe you can say, yes, he was able to coach an NFL team through a year where they were clearly digging the hole, and he kept the team together of a locker room full of professional athletes that, you know, that this general manager has hand selected and for character, and that's clearly been a driving issue for Ryan Poles, and he's been able to lay the foundation. Okay. That does not mean that this coach is the right guy to take it to the next step. And that's where I'm at. I think that Ryan Poles should feel like he built a team that should be sitting in the playoffs. That wouldn't even be needed yesterday
Yeah.
to matter, because this team was good enough in a weak conference, in a division that had some openings in it, and against in a schedule that was one of the weakest in the league by strength of schedule, by DVOA that of the offenses and defenses that they face. Anything you look at, this was a bottom 5 schedule, and for the Bears to finish 7-10 against the bottom 5 schedule with some pretty good players, I just don't see how that's anything positive for this coaching staff.
Yes, I agree. It's just we're speechless because we like I said, we had it pegged. We knew this Bears was going to be a pretty good team. The roster was better. It should have been a playoff team, and then they just couldn't get it done. It's too many mistakes along the way, and the fact that here we are. Black Monday is pretty much almost over now. There've been some head coaches announced as fired, some GMs have been let go. There are some teams making moves, but yet Coach Eberflus is in with his exit meeting with his players, along with GM Ryan Poles, instead of having his interview first, which that blows me away. How could you have the head coach in there when you're having a player interview and their exit interviews? Wouldn't you want to know how they feel about the head coach on the way out the door? They're not going to say that during these interviews. Flus is supposed to have his meeting with management midweek. I'm guessing we'll hear something at some point Wednesday. Who knows? But yeah, it seems like it seems like he's back. And what do you do here? What is the point of this? I don't get it.
I'm having a hard time. I'm having a hard time understanding it. I'm having a hard time how you get from all different angles why this is the guy that you want to bring back. This is the guy that you believe in. I don't get it. I don't understand it. It's not official yet, so we'll see.
Yeah.
But it's their process is Bears process is the Bears process. They're sort of on their own timeline always, right? They're not going to jump out. They're not going to try to be the first team to hire. Like they're just going to do their thing. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. We'll see if it works out, and if we get some good news, maybe we'll pop on with an emergency podcast later this week. But otherwise, might crawl in a hole. So let's move on to our stat of the week. Caught up in the numbers game. We teased a little bit. I haven't shared with you. We haven't shared with each other exactly what it is, but I think we're talking the same language. So why don't you start us off?
So my number this week is 7.2. And that is the average gain per offensive play from the Packers. Okay, so to give that a little perspective, when I saw it, I'm like, okay, that seems like a pretty big number, but I'm not really sure. So Brad Spielberger was on the postgame show last night with Bill Zimmerman for us, and Brad Spielberger mentioned that number 7.2 usually equates to about 35 points a game. Of course, the Packers did not score that many points, but they had the one drive that ended in a missed field goal. They had the weird play at the end of the half where they got no points out of that. And then they had the fumble. So they left some points in the board here. I never felt that game was the Bears had a chance. As close as it was the whole game, the Packers dominated that game. It was such a weird game, especially, and I watched it again today. The Bears started off nice. They got a field goal. They stopped the Packers, and you're like, wow, maybe this could be. But then, it never happened. Just the Packers dominated that whole game.
Well, and they ran out the clock at the end, and they were in field goal range.
6-minute drive. Yep.
Right. 6-minute drive to kill it. So here's where I'm going with my stat. When I watched the game, I was like, how many times did the Bears touch the ball? And here's how it relates to what your stat is. The Bears had 6 offensive possessions. 6.
Yeah.
The Packers had 7. The one that was, their 7th was the one that ended the game. So they had it at the end of both halves. That's why, the Packers had one more. So if you take that, expectation of 34 points, well, that's because a normal NFL game, you get about 12 possessions, 11 or 12 possessions. That's sort of what it evens out to. And so that's why that is so different. But then you look at the yards gained. 432 for the Packers to 192 for the Bears. And again, part of that is just like not a lot of possessions. Part of it was a lot of running plays, not a lot of penalties. I think it was 1 on each side. They only had the 1 turnover. He had the one missed field goal. So it was just there just weren't a lot of possessions, and then the clock just kept running the whole game. So that game was over fast.
Yeah.
The reason why you're saying, and I'm saying, and I think a lot of people saw the same thing, that this was just a dominating performance by the Packers was that, they had not that many possessions, 432 yards in 7
Yeah.
possessions, and that they were going in at the end there. Some missed opportunities, but like they just controlled both lines of scrimmage. And when you do that, like it just feels dominating. And that's why
Yeah.
you build up front. And so to me, that like I was when you watch it and you kind of felt like, man, it's just like it just doesn't feel right. Like you just haven't seen enough football. And then you go back, you're like, oh yeah, they only had 6 possessions.
Yeah, it was brutal. I actually tweeted out some of the stuff about the numbers. The 432 total yards the Packers had, that was the most the Bears have allowed since the Chiefs game earlier this year. And of course, Chiefs have a pretty good offense. The Packers offense is pretty good, but it's not at that level. And then the 192 the Bears managed on their side, that's the fewest yards they've had since Justin Fields' first start against the Cleveland Browns in the Matt Nagy era when he was sacked a bazillion times. So if this is truly the bookend on what we're happening here with this his career, that's a rough way to go out.
It does seem like it's the bookend, and rolls us right into the Fields report. So Justin Fields, 11 of 16 for 148 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions, 5 sacks for 31 yards lost, 8 runs for 27 yards. I thought that even despite the stat line against Atlanta, that was one of the best games I saw Justin Fields play. Not a lot of no turnovers here, so there is that. But this was one of the most underwhelming performances that I think Justin Fields has had this year for sure.
He was like 8 of 9 in the first half, right? With and then through 3 quarters, he was also 8 of 9. So it was like, you know, I saw a lot of stuff right about social media how the game plan was really unbalanced. You know, too many runs, not enough passes. But you mentioned it, 5 sacks, so there's 5 more pass attempts. He had 8 runs, which I think 4 of them may have been scrambles. So it wasn't like it was that off kilter as far as the run pass ratio. You know, he was just getting pressured, and he was pressured pretty much. You know, I didn't see the total numbers, but rewatching the game again, a lot of pressure. Those 5 sacks, there were guys in his face right away. Tevin Jenkins had a rough game. You know, the whole line had a rough game, and you know, usually it's him sometimes making some of these mistakes, but there's nowhere to go with the ball. I haven't looked at the all 22 yet, but you know, some of the concepts from Luke Getsy, you know, the hots aren't there. They're not presenting themselves quick enough to him. And then even some of the routes, you're like, why is everyone across the board not looking until they're, 10, 15 yards downfield? You know, that's just, I mean, again, Luke Getsy is in over his head here, and Fields can only do so much. And, but like you said, it wasn't a very good game from him, and it stinks.
Yeah, I think all things can be true. He can kind of have had a down day, and he wasn't helped out by the coaching or anything
Yeah.
like that. The offensive line had a rough one. We'll probably get into that here in a little bit.
Yeah.
I just overall, I mean, there is a real chance that this is the last Fields report that we do on this show. Right? I mean, that is it's a real thing. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm not saying what I think I would do or what should happen or anything like that. Everybody's taking a camp. I'll be completely honest. I'll say it right here. You want to lay out a plan that says we're going to bring in a guy that we think really fits Justin Fields. We want to trade out of this pick because we're not in love with these quarterbacks, which would be surprising, but we're not in love with them. We love the leadership. We want to trade down, and we want to have more picks to build this team and continue to build the Chicago Bears in that way. We feel like we have our leader in Fields, but we just need coaching that really helps him. I'd be excited. You tell me that, hey, we're gonna start fresh. We're gonna go hire an offensive coach, and we're gonna go get one of these top 2 quarterbacks, and we're gonna move on for Justin Fields. Just didn't work out. It is, it sucks. It is what it is, but it just didn't work out. I'll be excited. You can talk me into that. There's some scenarios you can't really talk me into, and it starts with retaining this coach. So like, I don't have this, like, I'm not going to take a side on the Fields has to stay or Fields has to go, because I think that you can sell me on a sound plan to build out this team around one of these guys that you have the option to do that with. And you have to trust that Ryan Poles makes that decision that's best for this franchise. But if the Bears just go and do the exact same thing that they've always done, I don't know what we're doing.
Yeah, that's where I'm at. I mean, it's brutal out there on social media, and
So
on talk radio. I mean, fans they're just mad. They're mad about this whole situation. They're dug in about their love for their favorite player or their hatred for their favorite player, or for Fields. It's like it's a huge divide. And Caleb Williams is kind of getting a lot of strays here from fans because he's the guy that's going to come in and replace their guy. I don't know, man. It's I'm with you. I can see a path regardless which way they go, but keeping Flus, keeping Getsy, please, good, my God, he's got to go. That's the worst case scenario. But if it's Flus with a new OC and new offense and a rookie, I think that's how we're headed here. I mean, it's not the worst case scenario, but it's not what I would do.
no, and it's almost surely destined to repeat the cycle once again.
Yeah.
When we're a year or two later, and okay, well, that didn't work out. Boy, who would have saw that coming? Well, let's see if we can get somebody in to work with this young kid. Hopefully, establish himself like a Justin Herbert right away. If that's the route they go, establishes himself right away as like, this is a legit guy. Like, everybody wants to coach him. It's a desirable landing spot. So that's what you kind of hope for. So, all right, let's take a quick break. And on the other side of this, we're going to do everybody's favorite segment, the Three Bears. Stick with us. Okay, Lester, Three Bears, hot bowl of porridge, cold bowl of porridge, and just right. I kind of found these categories a little tough. Maybe it's just because, like, you're at the end of the year, you're trying to, like, well, what are my expectations for these guys? What are my expectations for this team anymore? But hot bowl of porridge, let's start there. I did come up with a couple. So what did you say?
I'll be honest. I did not have my hot bowl guy until we hit play on the show, pretty much. I mean, I was going through the game, like, who has performed better than what we had thought they would? And for the game, I don't think anyone did. But I'm going to go special teams. I'm going to go Cairo Santos. Went perfect in the game, which is great. You can't do better than perfect. So I guess you got to give him kudos for that. But 35 field goals made is a new Chicago Bears record. So again, we're talking about a little season-long kudos here. So perfect in the game, 35 made field goals. Plus, I think he hit an incentive bonus where he made a little extra coin in his pocket this week. So kudos to Cairo Santos, longtime Bear, hopefully, and lead this team to some titles at some point, because he's been their best guy all year.
I mean, in some ways, he really has been the bright spot. He also got the bank shot. He got a doink that went in.
I really thought that things have changed. I'm like, oh my God! One day after the double doink, the anniversary of the double doink, here it is, a single doink in the Bears' favor. This is it. But of course,
it sounded different too, right? Well, you think this was like the cold, or like what happened there? Because
I don't know.
It was like such a weird thud from the other doinks that we've heard around the league. I don't know where they.
I think it's a CBS thing. CBS has different.
It might be CBS using microphones from the 70s. I don't know. It sound different, which I found funny. I thought maybe it was the cold, but it slid in there. That was nice. Little bank shot. Loved it. All right, I actually also went special teams. And I got Bayless Jones.
I was close to Bayless. He was the other guy I was thinking about. Yeah.
Kick returns, man. I mean, he didn't break one, but a little extra added yards on the returns, and like, he's got some juice back there. I know he's not doing well in the offensive side of football, but for kick returns, he's looked pretty good. And it's admittedly, that's not a great hot bowl of porridge to give out on the final week of the year, but I don't know. He's got juice, man.
He averaged 28.5, I think, per return. That's good. But it tells you, though, how the game went, though. We both had to go special teams for our hot bowl this week. That kind of shows exactly where we are both in our headspace as Bears fans this week. So I'm no Patrick Scales mentioned so far for the long snapper for putting him on the money. But there's still 2 more categories here. So
Yeah, you never know. You never know. All right, flip it around. Cold bowl porridge, guy that you're a little disappointed with.
I hate to do it to him because he's one of my favorite Bears, but Tevin Jenkins had a rough game. He gave up at least 2 sacks that I saw. There was another one that was kind of on a stunt. I haven't had all 22 yet to go back and dive into it, but he's got at least 2 from the TV copy that I saw that it looked like they were going to be his. He had a rough game, and to his credit, he tweeted out earlier today, my worst game at the worst time. I'm sorry, Bears fans. It happens. He's still my guy. I'm still a big fan of Tevin Jenkins. I think he's going to be, hopefully stays healthy. And again, one of these building blocks going forward, but rough game from Jenkins. Honorable mention, Dan Feeney. I know a lot of us are like, man, let's see Feeney. How much worse can it be? It can be worse.
Turns out it could be worse.
Yes, exactly. So
I had interior offensive line.
there it is. Yeah.
So I, that was one that I wanted to make sure we talked about. I think Jenkins just had a baby, so maybe there was a little bit of personal life distraction that was happening in his life. Not an excuse, just stating facts, and they are human beings, right? Things do happen, so it may have been part of it. I wanted to make sure that I took the opportunity to give Luke Getsy one final cold bowl of porridge on the way out. I know it's not in the spirit because we expect it from him, but I still am going to serve him up cold bowl of porridge because that guy sucks. And I just had to.
Yeah.
And then I do think that, and this is one of my favorite Bears, may have been his last game. And again, like there's some guys here, the last games potentially here. But Eddie Jackson, Eddie Jackson just missed some tackles, just looked a little out of it, beaten coverage once or twice, and just Eddie Jackson did not have his best game as a Chicago Bear, and unfortunately, I think that may have been his last game.
Seems that way. I mean, the money he's due, it's they can save a ton getting rid of him. He's 30, 31 now, so yeah, it's probably time to move on from Eddie Jackson. He had a nice run, but all things come to an end, and it seems like Cody Whitehair's end is here too. I mean, he had some comments after the game where he was talking about the Bears in the past tense. They will be good next year. It's like, okay, that's telling. So he knows. I mean, maybe he'll retire. Maybe the wear and tear of life in the NFL just got to him, and he never has been the same player. So I mean, if it's possible, that he just may decide to hang him up.
I think that's what it is. I could be wrong. And these guys, they have the love of the game. They may want to bounce around. Kyle Long, I think didn't he take a full year off and then try to come back, right? Like, I mean, there's precedent for this where you maybe just want to let your body heal and try to come back at a different time because he's not old, especially for offensive linemen. Like he could probably build himself back up and try to get back on the field. But he had quite a big contract from the Bears. Obviously, he's not going to walk away from that. Tried to get through the season, just not the same player. You would assume the Bears would make that cap saving move this year, what they weren't willing to do, or this coming year that they weren't willing to do this year. And then maybe he changes. Okay, all right. Now what do I do? Do I take care of my body? Do I try to like hook on for kind of like lesser money or league minimum type money? It'd be interesting because he's made the money, right?
Yeah.
Like I mean, that's kind of the point here is. He's done well. He's made the money. Like what drives him? Does he want to try to like get himself back to finish out the way that he wants to finish out his career? I mean, I love legacy stuff. I think that stuff's important. It's interesting. Whitehair looked like he was on a path to being one of the better interior offensive linemen in Chicago Bears history, and then just sort of got hurt a few times and just kind of derailed that high level of play that we were starting to expect from him. And that's really kind of fallen off. I don't think he's going to necessarily make any top 100 Bears list or anything like that at this point. So not a great graceful end for his tenure here, but like a really good solid player and certainly worth just like remembering and talking about as in good terms. So be interesting to see what he ends up doing.
There's another Bear where we talk about how the Bears didn't do the player any favors, bouncing around so much positions. Yeah, yes, some guys can do it, some guys can thrive at it, but center was all obviously a problem with him. And can you imagine how his career would have been differently had he just kind of been your guard? And that's always where he's been. He was just your 8 years at left guard. I mean, I think his career would have been much better. Yeah, he made a Pro Bowl at center one year, but I think his position was always going to be guard, and it never happened. He played all three interior spots throughout his career, and it just kind of wasn't able to kind of just hone in on one thing.
I know that no one likes me to say this, but that was a team record Pro Bowl choice. Like it was not his level of play versus
Yeah,
other centers in the conference. Like they're better centers. And again, I'm not trying to like downplay it because it's a career achievement and it's well deserved because he was a good player on a good team. He deserves to go to the Pro Bowl. But if you're just evaluating center play, he wasn't one of the best centers in the league at that time. So
no,
it is what he would have been a better guard. He's got much more guard traits. That's where he should have been and
yeah,
just should have left him alone. So I will die on that hill. that is one that I have been talking about for years, and
yeah.
I can't be moved off of it. So all right, let's talk about the Just Right Bowl. Did you come up with anybody for that?
Yeah, just right. You look on the defensive side of things, and linebacker T.J. Edwards. 10 tackles. He ended the season with 155 on the year. He's just around the ball. He had a stretch there the last few games where he wasn't picking up the huge tackle numbers, but when you watch the film, he's around the ball every time. So he's active. He's got his hands on a lot of uh, interceptions, tip balls. He's always around the football, and good things happen to guys who play like that. And he doesn't have the elite combine numbers, but good football instincts. Helps him out, and he's just one of those players where you expect he's going to produce for you. And again, a Chicago guy from the area, he wanted to be with the Bears. Ryan Poles targeted him early. He was the first player signed in free agency. Good pickup by the Bears here, and he's going to be here for the next few years.
Yeah, I think he's one of those players that actually like we kept saying, "Hey, this is a hot bowl porridge for TJ," because like
Yeah,
what's happening with this guy?
yeah,
And then you sort of like start to expect
yep,
that elevated level of play. And so now it's like, yeah, he had a really good game that may have earned him a hot bowl porridge halfway, into the year or early in the year. And now it's like, yeah, that's who he is.
yeah.
Like this guy's just a tackling machine. Was the same thing in Philadelphia, basically replicated his numbers in Chicago, but then was adding some of these impact plays, right? Had 3 interceptions, got a couple sacks. Like he was all over the place. Like he's in really valuable contributor. And I think, Montez Sweat is deserving of the MVP, the defensive MVP for the Bears. But if not him, Edwards, because he's been there the whole year,
Yeah.
right? Like it's really those two guys for me. Although Jaylen Johnson is going to be a potential first team All Pro, so maybe it should be him, right? Like there's some good players on this team, so maybe I need to like slow down on my MVP vote on who you give it on the back end here. So
That's fine. There are a few guys that you could definitely name for sure.
I wanted to highlight, one last time our guy Tyreek Stevenson. I thought he had a pretty good game. Again, like this is someone who a few weeks ago you might have said, "Hey, hot bowl porridge," but we're starting to now expect a little bit higher level of performance out of him, and he continues to deliver. And so I think that's great. And then again, one more time, particularly if this is Justin Fields' last game in a Chicago Bears uniform, just right. The referees not calling late hits on Justin Fields. This is exactly what we expect out of him.
Yeah.
And they did it once again. Unbelievable that this guy can't get protected like any other quarterback. There should just be a highlight film of all of the times that Justin Fields just takes a late hit in the chops and it doesn't get called.
He didn't get one call this year, did he?
I can't remember if he
Yeah,
did, and I don't understand it.
and there was someone who tweeted something out, and I didn't fact check it, but it's Twitter, so I'm sure it might be true. But they tweeted out the thing from the there's like a penalty.com with the NFL where they track it, and he showed not one late hit against him, not one unnecessary roughness, nothing. It was just I don't see it. I mean, there's, I don't know. He's a running quarterback, so they don't always get the benefit of the doubt. But you're like, come on, what are we doing when he's giving himself up and he's still taking the shots? And that Packers guy was slick with it. He kind of put his hands up, like, oh, I'm not really doing it, but he still threw his whole body in there and he got a good shot on field. And of course, he had the whiplash action. It was just brutal. It happens every game, and it's just sucks.
I mean, they either need to change their interpretation of the rule, or Fields needs to change his approach, because he's putting himself in a position to get hurt when he does that. But I don't get it. Like,
He's getting down now this year. I mean, this year he's sliding, and they're still not giving him the day.
They're still hitting him.
Terrible.
It's ridiculous. So that was again, a little bit of this is just me just making sure I say things one last time, because who knows if this will happen again. But unreal. So.
Yeah.
All right, the 2023 Chicago Bears football season ends at 7-10. We were wrong. We said that they were going to be 9-8, or on your side of the screen, 10-7. They blew 3 leads late in fourth quarters. So there you go. That would have been a lot closer to what we said, or somewhere in the range of what we said. I just want to have some final thoughts from you on this season, this team, this roster, and maybe what you liked and what you want to see going forward.
It's hard. It's so hard to evaluate it because there's so much uncertainty still to come. I mean, it's if they run it back with Flus and with Getsy, and it kind of clouds what we just watched, because 2 years ago it was fun year watching them go 3-win team, and it's interesting seeing how they all produced. And Justin Fields was a top 100 player in the league, voted by his peers. You're like, okay, there's some nice momentum they built, even though they did so bad. Nice offseason for Ryan Poles, which is why we had such high expectations. And then this year happened, and Eberflus shows us who he is. He's conservative to a fault. That's who he's going to be. That's probably who he's always going to be. And it doesn't matter who you bring in at offensive coordinator. I just don't see it mattering, because Flus is still the guy, and he's still making these conservative calls. But as far as the DJ Moore was outstanding. It was great watching him play. Khalil Herbert, he kind of had a nice start early, got hurt, bounced back late. I like watching him play, and Justin Fields, when he's out there, it was fun. But man, just a tough season all around as a Bears fan this year.
I think one of my takeaways is that this defense has a lot of players that can be good if you put them into a good scheme. I actually don't think this is a great scheme to win a championship. I think it's a good scheme to beat bad teams.
Yes.
And again, I know that's not going to make a lot of Bears fans happy, but that's just what I see. I think a good quarterback picks this team apart, and they have.
They do it every time. Yeah.
and so it seems like the most predictable thing. And it just continues to happen. So I would like a different, people. I like Flus as a defensive coordinator. I don't I don't think he's aggressive enough. I don't think he plays what I would consider to be modern day professional defensive football, which is going to be a detriment if you keep him around. There's that turnover luck's not always going to continue on that, like the hot streak that they had, and it's certainly not enough to take down any good quarterback. I think one of the non-Bears takeaways is that, unfortunately, Jordan Love is above the line of bad quarterbacks that this defense can beat, which was a question mark coming into this season, and that's an unfortunate one to have an answer the wrong way if you're a Bears fan. On offense, I think they're close to having enough quality starting players along the entire starting front, but there's work to be done. They need to add to the receiving core. They absolutely, obviously need to have a center, and they need to add depth along the offensive line. So when they do get nicked up, you're not going to see these horror shows every week for whoever's taking snaps. So there's still work to be done. But again, a modern scheme with someone who understands how to sequence plays, someone who understands.
Yeah, no, like the thing with Getsy and with Flus, they're both their play calling. I mean, with Flus, he had more of a leg to stand on. Obviously, he's done a lot more, but it's just, it's not what you want to see. You kind of saw Jordan Love picking apart in the game. I mean, he found those holes in the zone defense pretty much at will. I mean, and this is Jordan Love, and like you said, we had hoped Jordan Love would not be the next great Packer quarterback, and I think it's still too early to tell. But he sure as hell is not going to be bad.
Sure looks like he could be a good Packers quarterback, if not a
Yeah.
great one, which is unfortunate. Hopefully, he's just like good enough to make them waste a lot of years and never get to the promised land. But we'll see about that.
He's in the playoffs. We'll see what happens.
He's in the playoffs. They got a
Yeah.
chip in the chair, and that's as an NFL fan, that would be great. It'd be nice to have your they're a wild card team. I get to do something on wild card weekend and watch my favorite team play, even if they lose. That'd be a nice change of pace. So, all right, well, we're going to get out of here on the podcast. We're going to stick around for the final time this year to talk to the YouTube guys. The cadence for the off season, I don't know. We're see.
All over the place. Yeah,
we're all over the place. It is what it is. But we'll try to come up with something where this show comes back every once in a while. Maybe
sure,
have some guests. Maybe bring it in. During the year, it's just the two of us. We've got our categories and everything, but I think we can kind of shift it in the off season to bring in some other guys, get some other perspectives, and see what we can do with that. So look forward to that, but it won't be a standing meeting at 6:00 on Mondays anymore, probably until next fall. So, but I want to thank everybody that does tune into the show live or later or on the podcast, whatever. We love the feedback. We love interacting with you guys. We love, people posting on Twitter about my trench tribute this week is so-and-so. We love it. We love to see that stuff. So it's a privilege to be able to talk Bears, kind of lead some of these Bears conversations with you guys. And to you, Lester, year number 3 in the books for this show. And it's a pleasure bringing Bears coverage with you.
Oh yeah, it's a lot of fun. I love doing what we do each week here, and I reiterate everything you said. It's you guys are here, you're tuning in, whether it's video, whether it's podcasts. The numbers are still good, even though the Bears are still stinky. That's why it's kind of weird, but we have a passionate fan base. We thought we were going to have a winning season this year. I can't imagine how things will pop when the Bears have a chance to be good again. And, I just hope I'm alive to see it.
If the Bears are consistently good, how much fun will that be? Just give us like a 5-year run.
Yeah, that's all I need,
Great.
Man.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for this 2023 season. And we look forward to talking about the offseason and talking about 2024. And until the next time, bear down. I lost my happened all year. Just lost my voice.
That's because that's just that got to you. Finally, you're like,
finally got to.
Did you see the DJ Moore stuff? His
yeah,
man, doesn't seem very happy. He's a big Fields guy, obviously.
Sure,
but not happy with
the best quarterback he's had throwing to.
Not happy with the scheme and what's going on there. And I thought his comments were really damning. The way he kind of talked about what are we? Are we going to be a team that wants explosive plays, or are we going to just run the ball? It's like that's the league, though, right? Explosives. If you're not getting explosives out of your offense, you may as well take that shit back to the 80s because that doesn't win these days.
Yeah, so he had that clip, and then I think the exit interview clip from today.
Yeah.
And they were like, "Well, did you get an opportunity to tell the coaching, the Poles and Coach Eberflus what you think?" And he's like, "Yeah."
He had that sly look at his face.
A little grin the whole time. And they're like, "Well, do you think that they listen to you?" He's like, "Why wouldn't they listen to me? I'm DJ Moore." I'm not like cocky. It was just funny.
Yeah.
And then they said something like, "Well, were they taking notes?" And he's like, "Yeah, they were taking notes. I wasn't taking notes. They were taking notes." Yeah. It's like, okay. I think he went in and blasted. He's like, "You want to win in this league or not?" Who knows? Fill in the gap with what you think happened. But boy,
interesting for sure.
Now surprised that we haven't heard Getsy is gone. I think they're taking their time, and I think part of this, I don't know if this hurts or whatever, but there's kind of a pushback on the timeline of interviewing coaches that are in the playoffs this year. And so you can't interview him this week on Wild Card Week. Got to wait till next week. So I wonder if there was just a conversation about, hey, we're going to take our time. This is the procedure. We're going to do the exit interviews. Then we're going to meet. We're going to talk about the coaches, and then, we'll make a decision, and then we'll go from there. It doesn't, like, maybe it feels good. Like, it feels, throw the fan base something. But here's my thing. If they come out and said, Luke Getsy is no longer the offensive coordinator of the Chicago Bears. Okay. If that's what comes out, then that means that to me, that implies that Eberflus is back and they have fired Getsy, right? And so part of why I'm not concerned yet is that I haven't heard that Eberflus is back. Like, if it happens, it happens, and we'll all have to deal with this in our own individual way. But I'm kind of holding out hope that they sit down and they look at this whole picture and they say, what are we doing going forward, and what makes the most sense? And is this guy really the guy that is going to give us what we need to take this to the next level? I think Brian Poles understands football. I think he's a smart guy.
Yeah.
He came from Kansas City, where you had Andy Reid. It's one of the greatest offensive minds in the history of football. Like, doesn't he want something like that?
Yeah, you mentioned tone deaf organization with make so many decisions. Keeping Getsy would be tone deaf. I mean, the players can't be very happy with what he did out there. His sequencing of plays, it just the 2nd and 10 runs over and over. Like once you're behind the sticks, you're behind the sticks. Okay, now let's sling it. But no, not with Luke Getsy. The conservative nature, and again, some of it is the head coach. He's mandating this is how he wants his offense run. It's not like he's not like Buddy Ryan. He's doing his own thing. I mean, that doesn't exist. I mean, he's taking his keys from his head coach, and it's conservative by nature. So maybe Getsy will be better somewhere else. I have my doubts because his sequencing is so bad with what he wants to do. Nothing is set up anything else. It's not quite as bad as the Matt Nagy collection of plays, but it kind of gets that same vibe where it's like, okay, I got to get this play run because, it's 4th and short, and this was my 4th and short play. I got to do this play now because this was my red zone play that we worked on. I got to run this now no matter what. And sometimes those things don't work. Sometimes it's not set up yet. So you got to kind of go back to that. So we'll see what happens here. But yeah, Getsy probably gone. Flus, there was a report today by Rappaport and one of the other NFL Network guys. They said they're still weighing their options on Flus. Everyone's Garofalo. They say they're still leaning. It seems like it's going to be Flus will stay, but the team is still weighing their options, and we'll see. Like I said, midweek they'll have their interview with Bears management, and then we'll know for sure. And once they make a decision on Flus, I'm sure the Getsy announcement will be shortly thereafter.
That's when we'll hear. One way or the other, you're gonna hear it, but I can't imagine they bring him back. Cloudy says they talked about 50 and 15.
Yeah, terrible.
Which is pretty much start of the Favre era, I think, is probably what that tracks to. If in my head, I'm trying to do the math. And then it's an odd number because the NFC Championship game, which was
sucked.
When that happened, I worked for a guy for a long time who was a Chicago fan, born and raised, and I came in the next day, and I was distraught. Like I took losses very personally, for much of my life, and he again, he's a huge Chicago sports fan, follows all 4 major sports, and he's like, whatever, like it sucks, but it's one game in the history of this rivalry. It's not that big of a deal. And I'm like, I can't disagree with you like anymore. And I said, I think this loss puts the franchise back 10 years. Yeah. Like, I think that's how big of this loss is. And now we're like 13 years past this thing. And it's like, how was I conservative in my estimate? They can't get over that. But that destroyed that whole era. And then they've just been spinning since. They tried to run it back, right? They tried to hire new Lovey or whatever the heck they were doing here. It was nothing. I don't know. This is a disgusting number. It's not
Yeah,
a rivalry.
no more. Yeah,
You can't call it that.
and it was so lopsided the other way. I mean, it took Packers having these great running quarterbacks to kind of get it back in their favor in the first place, but now just piling on. It's like, you know, when will the worm turn here?
Bears fans don't want to hear this, but you know who the rival is? It's the Lions.
Yeah.
I mean, the record against the Lions in the last couple decades is very close.
Yeah.
Wow, this took a turn. Sorry. I mean, maybe one is Packers might just be a better team. Two, I think the game plans were terrible.
Yeah.
I mean, the soft coverage stuff reappeared. You know, just defensively too. They just let them walk all over them. So I don't know that they came out flat. I mean, it's your interpretation. To me, I see coaching that doesn't make any sense. I mean, this is talk about Getsy. You can't beat Joe Barry's defense, who had 30 points put up on him against the Panthers, who can't score more than 6 points in a game. Like the number of times that the Panthers got shut out this year and they put up 30 against the Packers, and you come out and you can't figure anything out. You can't do anything. Like to me, they're not putting their players in a position to succeed.
Packer fans hate Joe Barry. I mean, they just, this is why I picked the Bears to win the game. I thought they were going to be able to do some stuff against them. I thought they would be able to move the ball. I thought they'd be able to run the ball. And it just didn't, nothing was there. There was no cohesiveness. The trenches, I mean, I did not expect the Bears to get dominated in trenches this week. And it's what happened.
This is an interesting comment from Kenny here. Is Flus the most anti-Chicago coach of all time? He doesn't hype up rivalries, doesn't get overly emotional, defend or protect his players, particularly Fields. He's horrible with the media, and he just doesn't fit Chicago for me. I think he fits McCaskey.
Yeah.
I think that's the unfortunate thing. I think he embodies what the owner thinks a football coach should be, which is don't give the media anything. I do think the Chicago Bears organization, which I'm going to just say goes back to George, and I could be wrong, but they're very closed-minded media people. We've had our own individual experiences at camp, that help inform this. It's a little bit shaded by our own personal experience, but we have stories from other people that, just kind of make you shake your head. And the thing is, you say, well, every team's like that. We've got colleagues across the league, guys. Like, I hate to break it to you, but most other teams that the guys that we work with that work with other teams have much more access. They have much friendlier media policies that they work under. The Lions guys that write for Pride of the Detroit, they're in the booth. Like they're in the media booth. We would never be able to get that level of credential to cover a game for the Bears, right? Like it's a different level of treatment. It's there's even the beat guys, they're under certain weird rules that a lot of other teams wouldn't even dream of putting their beat reporters under. So it's a weird thing. And so I just wonder if this is a reflection of what George really wanted, what George really liked, because it seemed like he had a pretty big hand in helping kind of whittle down the coaches here. And it might be what he likes. Somebody who just doesn't put a quote in the paper. I don't know. That's what I don't know. Am I completely off here?
I mean, it's an interesting comment by Kenny here. It kind of makes you think the big coaching name out there, everyone talks Jim Harbaugh these days.
Right.
Would he even be a guy that the McCaskey family would want to have come in? He's a big personality. He does not care about, he will say what he wants to say. No one's going to tell him, hey, here's your talking points. No, he's going to do his thing against the media. So, yeah, I mean, maybe this is yeah. I mean, I think Bears fans would love a guy, a Dan Campbell type, just someone like that just comes in. He's really gruff, someone like that. I mean, I think Bears
kind of thing.
Yeah, Bears fans would love that. I mean, I want an offensive guy. Obviously, I want someone to come in and just kind of understand the game. But from the personality standpoint, yeah, Flus is very. Brad Spielberg on the show last night. He said he's met Flus. He knows people that know him pretty good, and he wasn't taking a shot at him, but he said he's the most Midwestern dad guy ever. That's just kind of how he comes across. He said he goes, it's not a shot at him. It's just his personality. Great guy, nice guy, but that's just how he comes across. And and it's just
there's a lot of people that were, just again talking about this a little bit with different people, and you see this a lot. Like Bears didn't even interview Mike McDaniel.
Yeah,
true. They should have interviewed Mike McDaniel because he's from the Shanahan tree that you're infatuated with, and you're interested, all that kind of stuff. No way would Mike McDaniel have meshed with 89-year-old Bill Polian and George McCaskey, right? Like, it's just not going to happen. He would have come in, he would have been himself, because Mike McDaniel is very comfortable with who he is, and he would have just talked the way he talks, and they would have been so turned off. There's no way they would have hired him. Now, that's my kind of coach. Like, if you want to watch the in-season Dolphins stuff and just how
I love that.
Yes,
that show has been so good. McDaniel has been awesome in that, and just the it makes you want to root for the Dolphins,
right? So he's very real. He has a connection with his players, but he's not filtered, right? Yeah. Like he's gonna say things that are gonna, to me, they're funny, right? But to some people, they a little pearl clutching, right? Yeah. And I feel like that's maybe a little bit of what the disconnect is that maybe the McCaskies don't really represent what you think Chicago represents, Kenny, and which I would agree with. Like, that's maybe a different level. It's not. I think of Ditka. I think of or even Levy, who is the opposite of Ditka in so many ways in terms of like demeanor. He embraced the rivalry stuff, and he would have stepped up for any. He would have absolutely argued Justin getting hit late, and he would have been in somebody's face about it, right? Like that kind of stuff. I absolutely would say that Levy would have done. Just not this guy. And I agree. This is probably it's a good call, Kenny. I don't know that he's anti-Chicago, but he's definitely doesn't feel like a fit to me either.
Yeah. Crazy.
All right. Anything else you see that we haven't covered?
We cover. I mean, just some talk about Fields. It just seemed like the era is over. Seems like the right time, the right opportunity because of the first overall pick. It seems like it's happening, and I'll be a little sad, but we're fans. We're Bears fans. We're gonna get right back on it, and we're gonna hope for the best because that's all we got. I mean, we're not gonna stop fanning for our team, but they make it hard, man. They make it hard.
I made a comment about how my timeline was just full of these like depressing comments like, well, why do we even care about draft picks? They're just going to screw it up anyway. Well, why do we even care about going out to coaches? They'll just hire the wrong person anyway. Like everybody's just in their feels. And I just kind of I was like, this is really depressing. And then I got people kind of arguing like, well, dude, like this is, I'm like, yeah, I'm not saying they're wrong. I'm not saying they're right. I'm just saying that it's depressing. I'm making a statement about my timeline right now that is a very depressing place to see this fan base just be defeated going into an offseason with the number 1 overall pick, another top 10 pick. Like, I think good progression from rookies and your second year players. So you should have some level of confidence in your GM that can make these picks, right? Like, I think there's some evidence here that there's been some progression on the young players. You've got cap space. Like, there's nothing depressing about the situation that this team is in from a like on paper football standpoint, but from like the emotional standpoint of this like 50-15 record that just got put up there, like that's really depressing. And this just like total just collapse of everything when it matters, I think is maybe that. And you buy into a young player, you think he's the truth. You think he's going to be the guy, and then now everybody's like, well, we're going to trade him. And that hurts a lot of people. And that's, I get that too. I there's some people in my life that still can't get over Greg Olsen getting traded. And I mean, I get it. Like he was a great player and I wanted him to continue in Chicago too. Right. So like, I don't know. It's a hard team to be a fan of. It's a hard team to continue to be a fan of. I think that's probably a good way to put it.
But we'll be there. We'll still be there all off season. covered as much as we can. We'll still be creating content. And what else are we going to do?
If you're willing to stick with us, we'll be
here.
here. Maybe that's the message. Sorry, it was a tough year. It was a tough year. So, all right, guys, we're going to get out of here. Stick with us. Obviously, the website's always got stuff cracking. So, if nothing else, see there. And then, we'll get some podcast stuff up, and we'll try to see if we can revisit stuff. If we get some good news, we'll pop on. So,
for sure.
But yeah, until next time, thanks everybody. Really appreciate this year. Thanks for all the comments, and thanks for all the interaction.
Appreciate it, guys.